with spring just a couple weeks away, I want to revisit one of the strategies that we're going to be using as the market continues to get more and more competitive. So I think this is a very good time to understand appraisal gap coverage. Now, appraisal gap coverage is often misunderstood that you have to bring that money to closing. I'm offering $15,000 to cover a short appraisal. That means I have to bring $15,000 to the closing table. That is not true. You can do that. Don't get me wrong. You're able to do that if you have the funds to do so, but it doesn't always make sense. So that's what we're going to do here today. We are going to break down what it looks like if you were to purchase a $275,000 home with a 10% down payment and offering a $15,000 appraisal gap. Now, before we get into that, we are using a 760 credit score and debt to income ratios under 45%. Those are important because they will affect your PMI and different things that we're talking about here. One note of why you would want to offer the appraisal gap coverage. It gives the seller a guarantee of value. You could inflate the sales price all you want, but if it's not going to appraise, it means nothing. And a good listing agent is going to recognize that. So working with a local real estate agent that understands how to write an appraisal gap and a lender that understands how to structure an appraisal gap is going to be crucial in your success if you're purchasing in a more competitive market. So let's go ahead and go over the base case. This is the offer that was accepted. We got it at $275. Let's say we went over value and we have some concerns. That's why we offered the $15K appraisal gap. That brings our loan to $247,500 with the 10% down. I'm using a 6.75% interest rate. Rates are going to change. Obviously, check with your team before you put an offer in so you can get the most updated rate pricing. That is going to give us a payment of $21.57. I'm rounding up to the nearest dollar. That $21.57 includes an estimate of property taxes at $390. That's about 1.7% of the property value. $120 a month in homeowners insurance. That's the same as hazard insurance. And then $42 a month in PMI. Again, your PMI is going to be based on your particular scenario. Now, the cash to close. This is the important one I want to break down. This is your down payment, estimated closing costs, title fees, taxes, insurance, government recording fees, appraisal, everything you should expect in a normal transaction. This number does not include things like HOA dues, home warranties, flood insurance, things that would be specific to the property. So just kind of know this is a placeholder. Again, your situation is going to dictate a lot of this. But nonetheless, we're looking at around 36 grand to close. Now, moving into the worst case scenario, the appraisal comes in 15 grand short. Our appraised value is at 260. However, we have agreed to still buy the home at 275. This is where it gets fun. You see that we are bringing 15 grand more to the table to cover that appraisal gap, but we don't necessarily need to do that. As we're looking at it, if we did, we would have extra money to put towards the down payment because now your 10% is going to be based off of the 260 because you're giving that down payment 10% and then you're adding the 15 grand onto that. So that is how you're getting that 50 grand. You have another option though, and this is what I love, is you can cover 15 grand in appraisal gap for roughly $30 a month or whatever your scenario is. Obviously, we can put these together, but it's important to look at you're only bringing another $500 to closing. And that is because $247,000 is 95% of $260,000. 5% down is still an allowable down payment. So this loan amount is still an allowable loan amount in this particular scenario. We're able to utilize almost the same amount of money because we're not changing our down payment to 10%. We're using that 10%, cutting it in half, and then using the rest for the appraisal gap. You can see as we're comparing the numbers, your PMI is the reason that things go up. You can see that everything else stays roughly the same as we're going through there. And then you are offering $15,000 in appraisal gap coverage.